Hi, this is Michael Bean. I'm an acting teacher. I've been teaching for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in 20 years of film and TV, teaching film and TV acting next year. So May 2022. And this is your free lesson for myfreeactingclass.com for Wednesday, April 28th. My lighting is terrible today, which you will notice at home, but don't hold it against me. I still know what I'm talking about, even if sometimes I have to take a class on the road. And this is the website for those of you who have not looked before. Highly recommend myfreeactingclass.com. And if you were to go here and scroll down to the video archive, you would find, take me there, you would find a history of past lessons. We've been doing this since April of 2020. Yeah, 1st of April maybe. So you'd see lessons with casting director Jackie Lind and Christopher Wozniacki, Annalise Tilling, Tiffany Mack, Judy Lee, and so many. I mean, that's just so many videos here. So for today, what is on your acting minds? What would you like me to talk about? Because today is an Ask Me Anything. I want to remind you that next week, and I'll remind you at the end of the lesson, that next week I will be posting new practice exercises. So Tuesday is always self-tape review. And anybody who wants to submit a self-tape, please do. All you have to do is go to myfreeactingclass.com, go right down here. Tuesdays, camera skills and self-tapes with Michael Bean. So self-tape review. Email your self-tapes to info@myfreeactingclass.com. Just click on this little link. And then this practice script here is going to get updated. So May's practice script, I will update on, I guess that is May the 5th, right? I suppose if it was May the 4th, I could give you all Star Wars themed scripts, but it's going to be May the 5th, so I won't be quite as geeky as I would otherwise. All right, talk to me, folks. Dia, please jump in.
I wanted to know if you don't have enough time to prepare, or if we get like some sort of an audition and we only have 12 hours or like a night, what are your tips on sort of getting a really good tape done in a short period of time?
Yeah, okay. Anytime you have a short amount of time to prepare, it's going to put you in touch with your inner perfectionist. Right? Yeah, and that's true. So, and if you maybe have like a big bad inner perfectionist who's like everything has to be perfect, maybe you've got a teeny tiny inner perfectionist that's like, oh, I really should have blah 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 blah. But like if they give you 12 hours, it's 12 hours, and you still got your whole life to lead in the meantime. They know that. The other actors know that, and we're starting to hear the complaint from casting directors about tapes being too perfect. They're like, oh, it's like the tapes are too perfect, right? They're too polished. There's no personality. There's no humanity. There's essentially no mistakes in it. So hopefully that's somewhat reassuring to your inner perfectionist, where it's like, oh wait, actually they want some mess, like they want some humanity. Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, but a couple of months ago, I was really excited about this like very simple exercise with all of my self tapes of like, you get it all set up until you're ready to go. You've got the lines, and then you step just off camera and you do 3 or 4 tuck jumps, and you get your heart rate all the way up, so that when you step in and do it, it's just a little messier, right? Not enough that you're out of breath, but just enough that you're like, okay, I'm a little bit more alive, and I got like more energy in my voice, right? And that's one way that I've found to bring some of the mess back in. But in your question, you're like, well, what if I've got the mess and I don't want it to be there? So the first thing is, mess is allowed, right? That the tapes do not have to be perfect to be viable, which I hope your Xena callback is like perfect evidence of, right? Like it does not have to be perfect to be viable. It just has to make them go, oh, this is interesting. We want to see more. So that's a good place to start. Now, in terms of how do you what if you got 11 pages for tomorrow, or what if there's like a page and a half monologue somewhere in your audition, and you've got it for tomorrow? Like those are the ones that actors just like, oh god, no. And so that's where sight reading becomes really useful. So do you have a piece of text, just like absolutely anything that you can pull up on your computer? Perfect, a script is good too.
Actually, I have something on my computer.
Perfect. Okay, so so my advice is that the that you practice sight reading, like especially if you don't have enough time, right from the get go. So the idea with sight reading is you basically orient it. So right now, like you've got me, spotlit, you can go into gallery view, and there'll be a little picture, and then you put the script right underneath me. So the lines you have to say, and you can actually play with the text size, right? So you can use the like minus key, and make it the text small enough that it fits right underneath my picture, so that then you're looking at me and you drop your eyes of that like 2 centimeters, and then you look back to me to say the next line, and nobody will know. The only way nobody will know is if it's straight down and straight back up, because that's something we do when we talk to people all the time. What we don't do when we talk to people is we don't look beside them on the floor, which is what it's going to look like if your script is even like that much off to the side, right? If it's right here, if I'm looking at you, I'm like, cool, I'm talking to you, and now I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to you. And it just looks like I'm thinking about what to say. But if it's even that much off to the side, then it looks like this. Yeah, I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to you. So sight reading is a pure technical skill that is very, very useful for this. And so even you're like, I still run into the like, oh, like I don't know my lines perfectly. And so what I've started to do is just make my home setup so that I can put the script right there underneath where I'm recording. And it's just right there. And like whichever page I know I'm going to forget, I just have it right there. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to use it because like, I'm badass. And then always when we get to that page, I'm like, yeah, Dia, so that's what I want to say. And nobody knows except me. And on the inside, I'm like, no, it's all ruined. But I watch the tapes afterwards and nobody except me is knowing that. But like one of the illusions, of acting, but also one of the illusions I think of being human is that other people know how we're feeling and they really don't. Like, shouldn't acting be proof of that for all of us? Because we're trying so hard to communicate what we feel, and people are like, nice, I don't get it. No, I don't understand. No, I'm looking at your face. I got no idea. And you're like, I'm full of feeling right now. I'm actually full of feeling. What do you mean it's not coming across? So so sight reading is really where one of the tools that I would recommend. And then just to have your sort of streamlined version of like what is the like I've got 4 days and would love to engage with this deeply look like, and then what are have you seen this 80-20 rule? The idea that you get 80% of the benefit out of 20% of the work, right? So I think that 20% is a little different for everybody. And that's where taking classes is really important, or doing regular practice like folks have been doing here is really important, because you're sort of learning where you get the most bang for your buck. Because there will be days where you don't where you got 2 scripts to prepare for tomorrow, and one of them is your priority and the other one's got a whole bunch of dialogue. And they're like, yeah, but there's less of a chance, or it's not a character that's not as good a fit or whatever. So I'm going to learn the heck out of this one, and this one I'm just going to have to give that 80% that's going to take me 20% of the effort, and that's going to have to be like my good enough audition. I actually have one of those right now that I workshopped on Monday, and I recorded it and was like, oh, perfect. Like I've got until Thursday, I'm gonna record it, and then I'll have like all this time prepared. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm packing down a studio. I've got 3,000 square feet of stuff to like put in a box truck. I'm not gonna be able to record it again. So I'm really with you on this one, Dia, in that like I'm gonna have to look at those tapes today and decide whether they are good enough. And you know what? Based on like the access that I have here, like they're just kind of gonna have to be good enough. And they're like, oh, I want to make them perfect, but you know what? This is definitely one of those things where if they like the tape and they want it perfect, they're gonna have to call me back, or so that, or say, hey, tape it again, but details. So that's a complicated answer to a simple question. Yeah, please jump in.
And also, in addition, so if I get the emotion right or the objective I get right, is it okay if like the words are like, should I put more emphasis on having it like, perfect, word perfect, or on the objective, if that makes sense?
The Because I approach work in a story-based way, my answer, which I think is going to be that like I prefer objective, right? Like and I much prefer objective to say emotional choreography. So I love that you made that correction. You're like, if I get the feelings right. Oh no, wait, actually, what I mean is like if I get the relationships that will actually give me those feelings, right? So I'm absolutely with you there. Um, and I don't think that while that might be the answer for me, and it might be the answer for you, it is not necessarily the answer for everybody who is watching this lesson. So again, that 80-20 thing, I think you just have to pay attention to your own process, right? Like if your inner perfectionist just will not let you get away with not saying the wrong words, right? Practice sight reading more, get the words exactly right. If that puts you more at ease, so that you feel like, yeah, I'm being a good artist, probably that'll make your work more interesting. you know uh, and I think that when I'm taping somebody, like if I'm working with somebody on something they haven't had a lot of time to prepare, the only spots where I'll be like, you know what, we're going to have to stop and rehearse this line is if when you change the words. And of course, like if any directors or writers are watching this, I'm not recommending that people change the words, okay? I'm like, yes, it's really important to get the words because I get it, you put a whole lot of time and energy into those and we really respect you. But if you only give us 12 hours and we also have other stuff to do, sometimes we're just going to paraphrase, but not if you pay us and we go to set, okay? So just like let's be real about that. um, the so if you paraphrase, what's really important is that you don't change the story. And words are so powerful that sometimes like you change a couple of words and suddenly you're telling a totally different story. you the where, like, I don't know, like if you're saying where are you going, and you're like, where have you been, you like, it's a totally different story. What you've actually said to people is not like that person's walking out the door but they're just coming back, and it's just two words and they're pretty close and they sound very similar, but that's when I would have to cut you and be like, you know what, you got to rehearse this line a little bit more, because it's fine for you to say what's going on, like that sort of tells the same story. I would feel fine, like, but like, and then at least the story can continue and you can get back to the text that but it doesn't break the flow of it. So I would say, if you're staying with the story, which you can find with those relationships, then if there's a couple of words here and there that you change, meh, 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 and you definitely are going to run into teachers who are like, it's unforgivable. And you know what? My suspicion is that's what that means is that's unforgivable for them, right? I think that anytime somebody gives you acting advice, you need to hear, or really actually kind of advice in general about anything in the world, you kind of have to hear the sneaky silent for me that belongs after everything they say, where they're like, it's absolutely necessary for me. It's totally absolute. Always you have to for me. The right. So if a casting director says that, well, that's meaningful information. What they're really saying is that like they care enough that is super important for them specifically, right? Because they're you're hearing the like silent for me, and you're like, yes, okay. If a casting director says it, that's meaningful. But if an acting teacher says it, or if another actor says it, aren't they really just saying for me? But they're saying it with lots and lots of conviction, like it should apply to everybody else. And are we kind of tired of most people in the world doing that a little too much already? So just like take it with a grain of salt. If you hear one of those, is my advice. Right? Anything that puts you back in touch with listening to yourself first. As an actor, as an artist. And I know that that's a very weird thing to say to a whole bunch of people who've made time to come to an acting class specifically to listen to someone else. But yeah, that push pull, of course, it's a tricky thing to figure out, and it is helpful to have mentors, to have people who are like, yeah, I get it, like I'm on that same road, I still haven't figured all this stuff out, but like I'm a couple of steps ahead of you, and just in terms of practice. The I think that's useful, but like nothing absolves you, from taking ownership of the work. And one of the things that's on my mind this week actually is that I'm teaching an advanced teens class right now, and oh my god, these teenagers are so skilled and such a joy to work with. And there's one of them who's really like made a breakthrough in her work recently, where her first takes are so alive and so personal and so believable, and then she gets direction, and it all goes to hell. Yeah, and it's really interesting. So what we're working with her on is like, look, you will really trust yourself, like clearly, because these first takes are so alive. And now we need to be able, we need for you to be able to go onto set or be in an audition. We need you also to have the skill of taking direction, like taking the thing, saying, yes, I absolutely, definitely can do that, and still grounding back in yourself before you jump into it, so that it is the same level of like connected and personal. You know, and it's not one or the other. It's not like, do we want the work to be personal? Of course we do. Like, do we want you to be able to like take direction and deliver a result when you're needed to? Yeah, of course we do. You know, they pull in different directions sometimes, but they're all part of what we're doing. All right, who else has a question? Anybody? Because I can totally chat with Dia for another 12 minutes. I'm totally cool with that. Yeah, please, Isabella.
This might seem like an easy question.
I'll take it. Good. We love answering those.
Do you have any maybe tips to easily memorize lines?
Yes. The So the sight reading thing, actually, yes, I have tips to more easily memorize lines, but I'm such a language nerd, I got to get in there. Because if your goal is, or what you're setting yourself up is that success looks like easily memorizing lines, you literally, depending on the brain you've got, might never ever achieve it. Right? Like I know actors who have been working for a very, very long time for whom learning lines is still a struggle. You know, in the same way that a professional athlete, when they go to the gym, they're still working hard. You know what I'm saying? You know, like some people will read like 5 pages of script twice and put it down and be like, cool, I got this. I wish I had a brain like that. You know, like if there was a trick to just like magically getting there, I swear I would tell you. You know, anything that I've been exposed to where people like, here's the way to do it. Like, there's that like sneaky for me behind it, and I'm like, yeah, no, I tried that and I didn't get the result. So yes, I think I can make it easier for you. And so a couple of easy things. One is try and pull yourself out of the like visual part of your or out of the like the abstract part of your brain that's focused on words and into visual. Our memories for visual things are like about 1,000 times better than our memories for abstract information. So this is one of the reasons why, if you can imagine yourself into the story, sometimes that will help it be more alive. You're like, where am I? What's happening next? Right? Like, so especially if you're struggling with the abstract thing of like getting the exact words and and the exact place, then it's possible that that's because you're in that school mindset of like, perfect, perfect, perfect. And if you pull out of that, just like take a zoom out a little bit into like, what is the story? Where am I? Who am I talking to? That's like a decent place to start. And then this sight reading thing, which is really annoying at first, but you basically drop down to the words, but then you look up to say it. Because what happens is if you're looking at the paper while you say it, you're actually just reading the lines. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not actually laying it down in memory in the same way, because you're just reading and you're really used to reading. And so if right from the very beginning you're like, these are the first 3 words of my sentence, and that's right, and it'll be super annoying. And the next time you'll be like, these are the first 3 words of my sentence, and that's the rest of it. And then by the time you're ready to perform it, it'll look like this. And here's the entire paragraph, because I just needed to like glance at it for a second to remind myself. Do you know what I'm saying? And so that sight reading can be useful. And then the thing that really made a difference for me, and I'm being clear about the for me here, but I've also really seen it work for a lot of students, is making the shift from visual to audio. Basically use the voice recorder on your phone, or download an app. Like there's an app made by a Vancouver developer called The Actors Lines. I don't know, it's like $10 or $12 these days, but like it's the best line learning app that I've used. And there's a bunch of them out there, or a half dozen anyway. And but really, you can just do it with the audio recorder on your phone. So let's say you have like the page of dialogue. You're like you hit record, and you're like, and these are the other person's lines. and these are the other person's lines, right? And then you play it back, and so you've got the script right there. You're hearing the other person say it. You're not looking at the page, right? So you're not right because otherwise you're going to see your own line out of the corner of your eye, and you're going to get hooked on that, and you're going to end up like staring at their knees while you do your performance because you're really focused on the words. But if you're doing it with audio, it's like I'm looking up as much as I possibly can, and when I hear the line finish, I drop my eyes to the line, I look up and I say as much of it as I can, and I look down for the rest of it, and I do that. And what you'll find, or what I found, I should say, and what many students find, is that when they make that shift, they start laying it down in memory faster. Partly because you are then actually training your memory muscle and not your reading muscle. And one of the things that just makes intuitive sense, and I've not checked this by a neuroscientist, so I gotta say that this is me purely speculating, but actually, like if you look at those like maps of the brain, there's a totally different lobe of the brain that processes visual information and auditory information. Right? They're actually different parts of the brain, and the one that you want to use when you're performing is the audio part. So you might as well rehearse with that part. And that's just me fully constructing a story for why it feels easier for me. But I like my story, so I'm going to tell you, and maybe you like it too. Does that help some, Isabella?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Another thing, like, do you ever find that when you're learning lines, they get this sort of musicality to them, where you're like you didn't mean to, but then you watch the tape, and it's just kind of got this sound where you're like, why am I doing that thing with my voice? I don't do that when I talk all the time. It's just got this slight like da 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 da. My vowels are longer than they normally are. Yeah, you get that sometimes. So another thing to think about when you're memorizing lines, is to separate the process of memorizing the words from how you're going to say them. And again, I have not run this by anybody who has more science background than I do. All I know is that 66-year-olds do it and 6-year-olds do it. It is some kind of absolutely basic human thing, and I have never seen or never worked with a newer actor who doesn't do it sometimes. Right? Like I've worked with actors who've like gotten it out of their system, or who or who had a really like a knack for it and could hear it, and so they basically train their ear very quickly. But I've seen it so much, and I still do it myself sometimes. So the story that I make out of that is that we are so inherently musical as people, that what happens is, right, that audio part of your brain, totally different part of your brain, you actually hear yourself say it the first time, and you're like, oh yeah, yes, oh, like that. And so then instead of saying the words each time, you're actually just copying what you said the first time. And each copy gets progressively less real and progressively less interesting because you're not saying the idea anymore. You're not coming back at it fresh with like, here's how I actually feel in my body right now. Here I'm looking at you, I'm seeing you, I'm hearing you. Yeah, I know I thought the character would be angry, but right now I don't feel angry, so I'm not going to fake it. I'm just going to say the line like this. Right? Like, and I'm going to trust that whatever I'm actually feeling is so much more interesting than what I think the character should be feeling. But if I fall into that trap of I got to rehearse how to say it, then it's so fast to get that musicality in there by accident. So I see some other folks, nodding. So maybe that is right. It's simple, and it's going to take learning, or for most folks, it will take learning and relearning and relearning and relearning because it is because it's not a quick fix. It's not a like, cool, I learned it once, I'm never going to do it again. Like seems to be, to me anyway, something that brains just do with dialogue. And so you're going to have to learn to hear it, and you're going to have to keep bringing your attention back to it, probably. Anybody else got a last question before we wrap up for today? Man, such good questions today. Good. Well, Candy and Scarlett, let's get both of your questions, and then I'll try and answer both of them, even if they're wildly different. Candy, what you got?
Okay. This I might just need to like email you a little bit, but it's about there's a possible musical theater audition on Saturday that I could.
Yes.
So, and then also because I've never set up, they're doing it through Casting Manager, and so I need a headshot, and I'm like, I don't have one. So I was taking ones like literally right as class was like about to start. I was outside and it was windy. Anyway, so I emailed you one of the pictures, but I don't know, like I was wearing this and I'm not sure if framing is right. And I decided to do it outside because there was some natural light. But so anyway, just wondered if you can look at it. It doesn't have to be in class, but if get your thoughts. And then I didn't do a self-tape yet, so
This will totally work as a headshot. You know, like
it would.
Yep, it's not ideal because you're not looking right at the lens. For a headshot, you should be looking
Okay,
right
I
at the
didn't know
lens.
what to do. Okay.
You know, but you're right that the lighting is like wonderfully even. You know, like I'm not crazy about the texture of the wall behind you, but you can even get
Okay.
into Photoshop there and blur that a little bit. You know, like
I can do this instead. I was just doing it outside against the house, so.
totally. Well, and the lighting is much better than where you are right now. Like right now, you got all these hot spots on your face.
Yeah, I don't have my ring light right now. It's actually still outside because I use that too with the outdoor lighting.
Yes,
So,
right.
okay.
You know, so that's the short answer to that. But I will come back to your question about musical theater auditions after I've heard Scott's question.
No worries.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Of course. You know, like, it's a great question. Scarlett, what do you got?
How do you fake cry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting a crazy echo on your audio for some reason, Scarlett. Can you try unmuting yourself again? We'll see if we get it a second time.
She put it in the chat, I believe. It's
Good.
you have tips on fake crying.
Okay. Well, okay. Man, I have a long answer to your simple question, Scarlett. You know, which is totally my jam as a teacher to be like, well, there's context and details, and here's some of the like 6 things that I've seen work, and I get it that actors are always just like, just tell me what to do. Oh my God, please, somebody just tell me what to do. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Really, this is why you're like, this is what being an artist is about. Is like you have to notice what works for you and pay attention, and nobody can take it away from you, even if you really want that. But of course, maybe you're all you already on board with that. So hey, you're like, yeah, we're showing up for your lesson, Michael Bean. Stop preaching to the choir. You know, okay, so Candy and then Scarlett. Candy, musical theater. You know, my recommendation, you know, if you're taping a musical theater piece, you know, is now I'm not a singing expert. I can't talk to you about the singing. But what I can tell you is that objective and relationship are just as powerful with musical theater, and singers very rarely think about them. They very rarely think, who am I talking to? And what do I want them to do or feel? And once you start treating it like, I've worked with musical theater artists, I've worked with opera singers, you know, and it's very, very effective. You know, and sometimes you get these like fantastic like light bulb moments where people are like, oh my God, it never occurred to me that like, you know, like what I want them to feel. You know, in the same way that you see that happen for actors when they play with objective, where they're like, oh wow, yeah, I get it. I have this result of this feeling that I want to have, but the best way to get there for me, like to actually make it alive in my body, is to figure out what I want them to feel. Yeah, and who that is to me, and then just go after it. Yeah, so that's my advice for a musical theater audition. And then Scarlett, you know, I have a couple now. Is this for a specific project, or you mean in general? Scarlett, I'm gonna mute myself, and then maybe we won't get the crazy echo. So why don't you?
I'll just answer for her because we're in the same room where her audio isn't working.
They're in the same room. Yeah, that's why we're getting the feedback loop between your 2 computers. Thank you.
So she just means in general.
Okay, in general, good. If you're in a big, broad, silly comedy, you fake cry literally by just going for it, like pure commitment. You know, and like from big, silly, fake comedy where we're supposed to laugh at you, that works. For real film and TV acting, you just don't. You don't fake cry. You either figure out how to actually cry or you don't. You know, that's my answer to like your fake cry question is basically for big silly comedy, yeah, just go for it. And there's a whole lesson that I did a while ago. If you just search through the archive, like how to cry, it says how to cry in comedy, I think is the title of the lesson, and they'll talk to you about like using your diaphragm, basically that muscle used when you laugh is also the muscle used when you cry, that like ha, 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 and it gets your shoulders to shake if you do it, so you can just like and it's ridiculous, but it's astounding how well it works, especially on younger actors like yourself. Like right now, Scarlett, just scrunch up your face in your best crying face. No, really scrunch it up. Yeah, but you can't laugh. You can't be laughing at it at the same time. You have to actually do it. Good. Yeah. No. Don't cover your face because we can see you're not actually crying. No, scrunch up your face in your best crying face. Scrunch it up. Yeah, good. Yeah, and get to the belly bounce. See, and what's wild is that like some of what we're seeing actually kind of works. So big fake comedy can totally do that. Now the answer for film and TV is, of course, what you don't want. It's sort of like, it's like, I don't know, learning to do a jeté. It's just going to take a long time to get it, exactly right. Where like, at first you're going to be like, I'm an elephant, and then, and it'll take a long time before you're like, okay, I've got it. Like, I get it. I feel like I'm flying now. And that's about like opening up emotional availability in yourself, learning to connect with the scene in a way that feels real to you. You're finding ways to access genuine feeling in the scene. And then inside of that, there's some little like tips and tricks that have shown up here in the lesson, but they're not at all a substitute. Basically, if you're already actually feeling sad, it doesn't matter if you leak. It really, really does not matter if you cry. And then if you are doing a scene where the other character says, Scarlett, why are you crying? And like we like as actors, we're like, curse you, writer. But if you really get a scene like that and you're actually feeling sad and you're not leaking, you literally just turn away. The way that somebody would if they didn't want somebody else to see that they were crying. And that justifies it, right? Like you don't go, I'm gonna wipe pretend tears. You're just like, if you're actually feeling it, and you just take a second, and then the other character says, why are you crying? You can come back and be like, feelings from however you're actually feeling. And then you don't have to fake anything. And if you've never done anything like that before, then I would say that it takes like 2 to 3 years of dedicated practice. And if you're just like dabbling for fun, then maybe more like 6 or 7 years. But that's fine. Like you look like you're at the age where like you could just totally do that. You'd be like, I'm just going to take an acting class, like once a week, some semesters, between now and the end of high school. And, like you'd probably just figure it out at some point. And you'd be like, oh my God, I get it. Right? Because like you get it here, but it's going to take time to land here. Partly because it's about, because tears in particular tend to be about either emotional safety. For a lot of actors, it's like actually about them feeling safe. Right. And so it takes like being vulnerable, in a safe environment, like in a class or somewhere, and having it not be terrible, where they're like, hey, I did this scary thing and I didn't die. And then your body's like, cool, let's do more of that. And then that can like EQ towards more, towards where like, it would be really fun today, crying more, like maybe, and then some, and this is where, again, like I am not a psychologist, right? I just know that like for some folks, for most of my students, it's about feeling safe. For some of my students, they've got like crying on a hair trigger, and what they, and then the feeling safe thing is what they need that to like, to do characters where they experience joy. And I'm just like, like everybody's got some feelings that are like, yeah, that one, no problem. But these ones, awkward, cringy, so fake, feels strange, right? Like I think that's just part of being human. Would love your thoughts on Meisner. Yeah, great. Let's talk about Meisner next week, Dia, because yesterday I went half an hour over on my lesson. And if I start talking about that, I'll be like, yeah, let me offer a couple of thoughts. And then it'll be like 15 minutes from now before I notice. Great. Such great questions today. Thank you all for joining. And thank you for being willing to ask those simple questions, Isabella and Scarlett, because I've been teaching so long. Those are some of the things that I that I forget are actually like the most foundational and most useful. And so going back and answering those questions in different ways on different days over and over and over again is not just valuable to the two of you, but valuable to, I think, a lot of actors. And so I really appreciate you bringing those in today. Okay. I will see you all next Tuesday. Send me your self-tapes if you want to. But would love to see some more self-tapes from y'all. And Isabel and Scarlett, that practice exercise from April is right there. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.